On the eve of Orthodox Easter, a glimmer of hope emerged from the ashes of war in Ukraine. Russian President Vladimir Putin announced a 30-hour ceasefire, a gesture intended to mark the holy occasion and offer respite to a nation weary from months of relentless conflict. The announcement, broadcast on Russian state television, called for a cessation of hostilities, a pause in the fighting that has claimed countless lives and displaced millions. The news reverberated around the globe, dominating headlines and sparking cautious optimism among world leaders. Could this be a turning point in the conflict, a sign that peace might yet be salvaged from the wreckage of war? The world held its breath, watching and waiting to see if the promise of silence would be kept. However, beneath the surface of this fragile hope, skepticism lingered. Putin's history of utilizing ceasefires for strategic advantage, particularly in conflicts like Syria and Chechnya, cast a long shadow over the sincerity of his intentions. Was this a genuine gesture of peace, or a calculated maneuver designed to advance Russian military objectives and sway international opinion? The fragility of the ceasefire was exposed within hours, as reports of continued violence emerged from the front lines. Despite Putin's pronouncements, the guns did not fall silent. Explosions continued to rock Ukrainian cities, and the relentless barrage of artillery fire continued unabated in many regions. The northeastern city of Kharkiv, which has endured some of the most brutal attacks since the war began, was once again targeted. 3 missiles slammed into residential areas, shattering the illusion of peace and underscoring the stark reality on the ground. The promised truce, it seemed, was little more than a cruel illusion. Ukrainian officials reported thousands of ceasefire violations, accusing Russian forces of using the truce as a cover to regroup and reposition their troops. Russia, in turn, accused Ukraine of violating the ceasefire, further fueling the cycle of mistrust and recrimination that has come to define this conflict. The skepticism surrounding Putin's Easter ceasefire is rooted in Russia's history of weaponizing ceasefires for political gain. Time and again, in conflicts spanning from Chechnya to Syria, Russia has utilized temporary pauses in fighting not as genuine steps towards peace, but as tactical maneuvers designed to advance its own strategic objectives. In Syria, Russia's intervention in the civil war was marked by numerous ceasefires, many of which were subsequently violated by the Syrian regime and its allies. These pauses in fighting often allowed the regime to regroup, resupply, and ultimately strengthen its grip on power. The ceasefires, in essence, became a tool for prolonging the conflict and perpetuating the suffering of the Syrian people. Similarly, in Chechnya, Russia utilized ceasefires to quell international criticism and portray itself as a peacemaker, while simultaneously pursuing a brutal military campaign against separatist forces. These ceasefires often coincided with periods of intense fighting, suggesting they were more about managing Russia's image than genuinely seeking a peaceful resolution. The pattern of utilizing ceasefires as a tool of war is really deeply ingrained in Russia's military doctrine. From the frozen conflicts in Georgia to the ongoing war in eastern Ukraine, Russia has time and again shown a willingness to exploit periods of relative calm to advance its own interests, often at the expense of civilian lives and any chance for lasting peace. The 2008 war between Russia and Georgia over the breakaway regions of South Ossetia and Abkhazia, it provides a chilling example. Even after agreeing to a ceasefire brokered by France, Russia continued its military operations, seizing control of key infrastructure and displacing thousands of civilians. That ceasefire in effect allowed Russia to solidify its military gains and really consolidate its control over the disputed territories. The echoes of these past conflicts honestly resonate deeply in Ukraine, where Russia's pronouncements of peace are often met with a lot of skepticism and distrust. The Easter ceasefire, instead of being seen as a genuine opportunity for de-escalation, is viewed by many Ukrainians as just another chapter in a long and bloody history of Russian deception. In the face of Russia's Easter ceasefire announcement, Ukraine responded with a mixture of caution and, a fair bit of skepticism. President Volodymyr Zelensky, while expressing hope for peace, made it clear that Ukraine would not let its guard down. He ordered Ukrainian forces to remain on high alert, fully recognizing the potential for Russia to exploit the ceasefire for military advantage. Zelensky's skepticism is definitely shared by many Ukrainians who have grown weary of Russia's empty promises and broken truces. They've witnessed firsthand the devastating consequences of Russia's willingness to weaponize ceasefires, and they are determined not to fall victim to the same tactics again. Instead of embracing the ceasefire as a sign of hope, many Ukrainians used the brief respite to prepare for the possibility of renewed Russian offensives. They reinforced defensive positions, stockpiled supplies, and steeled themselves for the prospect of, unfortunately, further bloodshed. The international community honestly greeted Putin's Easter ceasefire announcement with cautious optimism, but that was definitely tempered by a deep awareness of Russia's history of utilizing ceasefires for political and military advantage. Western leaders, while expressing hope for a lasting peace, remained pretty skeptical of Russia's true intentions. The United States, while not outright dismissing the ceasefire, urged Russia to match its words with actions. Secretary of State Marco Rubio cautioned that the US would closely monitor the situation on the ground and wouldn't hesitate to resume peacemaking efforts if, tangible progress was made. The European Union echoed these sentiments, calling for a complete and verifiable cessation of hostilities. However, there was a palpable sense of weariness among European leaders, many of whom have grown increasingly disillusioned with Russia's willingness to engage in good faith negotiations.